So if you don't know, Dennis Kucinich, who I used to like very much, and then he took money from a Syrian front group and then pretended he didn't know it, and then realized that he was actually like kind of pro-Assad, and his reasoning behind it was essentially that the PLO and the People's Front and all that kind of stuff. And if you go watch Life of Brian, you'll understand this kind of overlap of old school commie socialist types from like the 60s and the liking the PLO and other groups, because it was this overlap of that they're going to start a socialist Arabic revolution in this thing. And that, in the same way that the Nazis created a national socialist movement, I suppose. Same shit, right? Didn't turn out to be the case, but that's why they got in bed with them, because like, oh, the Syrians are our new hope for a socialist utopia. Yeah, the People's Front of Judea splitters. So a lot of old school, dem socks and socialists and whatnot are on the side of of Hamas and the PLO and the PA, largely because they view the Jews and as money, aka capitalist beasts of old, and that the future is a socialist Hamas utopia. I'm not kidding. That is really where they think this is going, and it's going to be ugly, and a lot of people getting murdered, and obviously there will be rape farms and all kinds of stuff like that. But if it gets us to the socialist utopia, then it'll be worth it. Yeah. Arab Spring grifters. Yeah, the people who are trying to ride on top of that and pretend that they actually gave a shit, and when actually they largely support the more violent factions that are out there, because those are the ones that pretend to have this. And there's some argument that the PLO was created by the KGB as a psyop itself, and that they created the illusion of Yasser Arafat and all this kind of stuff, and laid out this whole like People's Front, Popular Front, all that kind of stuff, that used a lot of socialist language around this to draw in the American left and the Western left to try and support the Arabs against the Jews and keep us embroiled in this back and forth. So that was one of the stories for a long time. Anyways, the Syrians are definitely on board with that shit. While they'll play footsie with the people who pretend to have this kind of like, once I'm done killing all these rebel groups and all these Kurds and any of the Turks that are on the wrong side of the line, then we're going to have a socialist Syrian utopia. That's the thing. And everybody, you won't have to buy your Nazi stamps. We'll just hand them out for free. So, yes, you can buy Nazi stamps and put them on your packages in Syria. They're just for decoration, though. They're older, but they still print them just for nostalgia's sake. Ugh. So anyways, this guy, Dennis Kucinich, who was like one of, I think for a lot of us, Dennis was one of the early kind of, he was almost like the Ron Paul of the left, right? And there was a bit of horseshoe theory on him and Ron Paul about, they were both, before we all got wise to his audit the Fed horse shit, that it was actually just a scheme to undermine the economics of the United States and put us on our knees in front of China or Russia at the time, which is really what the backstory of that whole thing is. From an innocent point of view, it seems like a reasonable thing to do, right? Even though you don't have to audit the Fed. The fucking Fed puts out their fucking what they buy and sell all the time. But I guess if you say audit the Fed, the assumption is that they're either lying or they don't. And if anybody walks up to you and go, the Fed's books are available. You can go look at them. Just real complicated shit. Most people don't. Yeah. So anyways, there was a lot of overlap with Kucinich. And back in the day, I liked him very much because he was, he seemed to be anti-war at the right times and that kind of stuff. And again, if you look at it that way, so was, in theory, Trump and Rand Paul. Now, it turns out that they weren't at all, and that Trump's whole thing was, his problem with Iraq was, we're going to go in there and we're not going to take everything they have. We're not going to take their oil in exchange for protecting them from themselves. So anyways, Kucinich is unfortunately in that ballpark. He was running Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s campaign. He's not anymore. And this is his reasoning, I guess. We parted ways. This is why I quit RFK Jr.'s presidential campaign, Dennis Kucinich. Let's see. And it's a 4-minute clip. It's really short.
Hey, before I let you go, I just want to ask you about your stint with the RFK Jr. Yeah. And, we think a lot of people have, attracted to his free speech stance like you have, anti-censorship, his ability
Anti-vax.
to stand up against corporations.
You do realize you can win a day of hawking with something that all of us plebes have dreamt of doing with a Kennedy. We're gonna go hawking.
As an environmental lawyer, and he stood up against big pharma.
Which, by the way, his stint as an environmental lawyer, there are things where people do. Oh, he's loud. I'm sorry. Beg your pardon. There are things that people do that's good, that they're doing not because they're all in on it, but because they need to rehab their image. We see it all the time. It's called cause marketing most of the time, which is you attach yourself to a charity, and then people assume the good traits of that charity on you, and especially if you've done something gnarly or fucked up, it's really good to go, marching with the right people or work with a charity, that kind of stuff. And it doesn't mean that everybody that does it is just doing it for that reason. Sometimes you're genuine. But there was a period where RFK was using heroin and he was philandering and cheating on his wife and all kinds of shit like that. And right after the sort of stories in the late 80s came up about that, there was this idea like, is he going to be the next Kennedy that dies because of an overdose and all this kind of shit? And he gets clean and then he starts doing the environmental stuff because a lot of people were for it. It was a burgeoning movement, Earth Day, all that kind of stuff. Nobody needed to be talked into this shit. He wasn't on the vanguard. He was just, and he had fucking free time.
And he's the only voice that a lot of people have about COVID. And then
about what? It being a plandemic? What do you mean? Only voice? You don't think they can vote for Trump?
And he got it right on Ukraine, which was amazing. And then
no, he didn't.
Totally throws it all out the window when it comes to Gaza and Israel.
Yeah, but again, this is why. This specifically is why I think what I think about RFK Jr. But if you recall, he starts going all in on like he burgeons his Israel stance and gets a lot more hawkish about Gaza. You know when he did that? Anybody remember? Right after that video came out of him at one of his fundraisers at this fucking fancy restaurant where he's sitting around just blathering, and he said that, isn't it interesting that Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese people don't get COVID the way everybody else does? That genetically it was created. Either the Jews were paying the Chinese to do it in their lab and it got out, and the Chinese put in a failsafe so they wouldn't get sick from it, or they worked on it together or whatever. Just dream up whatever, spackle it with the conspiracy of the gaps. Just anything, any part of this that doesn't make sense, just go fucking Illuminati. Just take some Illuminati spackle and just go like that. And that's what he fucking did. Yeah, he came out and said Chinese people and Ashkenazi Jews somehow don't die at the rate, which is also bullshit. No, not even close. But he got called out as an anti-Semite. Remember that? And he was on shows, I'm not an anti-Semite. He was yelling about it. Remember that? It's terrible. They're calling me an anti-Semite. And then he got very hawkish on Gaza. It was like when October 7th happened, he was like, phew, now I can burgeon my cred with the Netanyahus of the world. And so he's pissed at him for that. But that's exactly how he found himself in this, in the same situation with like environmental law and all this kind of stuff, and trying to like build up the Kennedy brand while fucking around and living off of it for a long time and being generally a rich shitheel and a philanderer and an asshole. And by the way, Kucinich says he's a good man and I believe in him and all this kind of stuff. But they're going a different way with the campaign than I thought. At least that was the statement he released when he quit. I don't know what his take on his or what his version of it will be here. But it sounds like it's either the Israel stuff and he just doesn't feel like saying it because that would make him have to say something, or this other just personal weird fucked up shit. Like he's touring the country picking up just kind of like campaign ass And he's back to his old kind of philandering ways, and his wife doesn't give a shit because she's busy.
And he even went even further and kind of saber rattled with Iran and Venezuela and China and Russia over oil. So tell me about how.
Also, I don't know I don't know specifically what he's referring to there, but it's entirely possible that he did. It's also entirely possible that Jimmy is ratcheting up what little thing he said that was probably fairly normal into something extreme because he's full of shit, and he's selling the opposite. He's like, there's this like weird proto-Iranian stance.
How, if you want to talk about it, I would appreciate it if you share with our audience what that was like, because I know you're a staunch supporter of the Palestinians and you want peace, and
yeah, but does that mean folding the West Bank into Jordan and just letting it be Jordan? What do you mean? And by the way, how do we know he actually wants peace, or where that peace should come from? Is peace the same as surrender, is the question, usually. And on October 7th, was he doing cease rape now?
You've always been for peace, so tell me, what was it like?
No, he hasn't. No, he hasn't. No, nobody takes money from an Assad front group, knows it, hides it, gets caught and has to return it. And, oh, by the way, just in case you guys don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, hold on. I think. Good old Notion, where are you? There we go. Let's see if I can do this. 1, 2, 3, and go. Wake up, Paige. Why are you so slow? Why would this page take so hard? Why is this hard? It's going back and forth and back and forth. It doesn't like it. Okay, you know what? Fuck it. Hold on. I'm going to, while it's trying to wake up, I'll grab this. Whoops. I'll grab this. Copy. And then I'll go and I'll try to throw it. Sometimes we have an issue with that browser. It gets weird. I don't know why. I think I overwhelm it with all my clips. See if it opens on here. Just being a jerk. All right, when it comes up, when it opens, yeah, it just doesn't want to do it. Hold on. Sorry. Dennis Kucinich returns. Whoops. Funds Syrian, something like that. That'll bring it up. There we go. He got paid a speaking fee. There it is. Boop. This happened back in the day. This is the thing. And here's the thing. Sometimes I don't doubt that they'll try to, sort of diplomatically honeypot you into stuff going, we're a peace organization, we're associated with them, but we're not really associated with them, and we don't, we're not trying to, support the government, but we do want to try and push them in a direction, so we want you to think, and people can get talked into doing, events and shit that they wouldn't normally do under this, this premise. But the problem was, yeah, there we go. Former U.S. Rep. Dennis Kucinich, Democratic candidate for Ohio governor, said he plans to return a $20,000 speaking fee he received last year from a group sympathetic to Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. Now, it's one thing if you got money from the group and they just donated it, and then you're like, I don't know these motherfuckers. They paid you to speak. Kucinich come under mounting political pressure after news reports revealed that the Association for Investment in Popular Action Committees that paid for the speech was the parent organization of the pro-Assad Syrian Solidarity Movement. And again, notice the use of all these very socialist, popular action committees. Solidarity Movement. This is the same language you heard about the socialist movements in the 60s. They use that language to try and bait in lefties, quite frankly, into thinking hey, if they're going to have a socialist future, it's only going to be through us because, we're not afraid to kill people to do it. Stalin was so close, but he just wouldn't kill enough people. He only killed 40 million of his own people, or 60 million. I think it was Mao only killed 40 or something like that. Yeah, the organization did not identify itself as having any interest other than human rights and never specifically mentioned to me their interest in or position regarding the Syrian regime, he wrote. If they had, I would have declined their offer because anyone who stands for peace must be able to remain above the appearance of influence. Your campaign people checked. They hid it from, he didn't put it on his financial statement. This is the thing. The reason the controversy came was not that he took the money and gave it back. Most of us have no problem with that. If you're like, yeah, I spoke at this organization. I showed up and they weren't what I thought. I gave my speech. I told my truth, but and they gave us campaign money. I used it for the campaign, but I'm not comfortable with that. So we gave it back to them because it turned out to be kind of a front. We should have done more due diligence, right? That would have been fine. They hid it on the financial disclosure so that instead of it being basically a campaign donation, it was just money he took to talk to this group because they knew. He knew. So that's what that was about. And that's the part that bothered me. Not that he spoke and gave the money back or that he got money and gave it back. Because again, like I said, they're going to try and work, that is I'm surprised I would be surprised if every campaign doesn't have to give back some donation at some point along the way that somebody tries to sneak in there, even if it's just to dirty you up. Like, that sometimes people on the other side of an issue can give money to you through another format and then release the news that it came from you, from them later on, and then you have to defend yourself against your own fucking people, right? Where they're like, hey, why'd you take money from these awful people? And they did it. They gave you the money and then they outed you for taking the money that they gave you under false pretenses, and you give it back to them, but the damage is done. I'm surprised every campaign doesn't have to go through that shit, right? Of course. However, if you do go through that stuff, it's pretty easy to handle. If your people come to you and go, hey, that group, there's a news story coming out that they're a front for this group or whatever, like, send it back now. Immediately. Issue a statement. We're not having anything to do with it. That's not what we were there for, and that's not welcome in our campaign. Done. You turn it a loss into a win that quickly. You don't go, that speech I gave last month? Don't put that on our campaign disclosure. Put that, yeah. Just make that a personal, like a private thing I did to make, yeah. It'll just go through on my regular taxes. Don't put that in the, like, if that's your response, then no, you don't belong anywhere near political office.
Like to be his campaign manager, and how did you guys split?
Well, Bobby and I have known each other 30 years.
Bobby, that's how I am with the Kennedys. Bobby, we're talking about Kennedy, right? Not De Niro.
He actually flew to Cleveland.
Really? Does anybody fly to Cleveland? I thought you had to take like a horse and buggy or something like that. I mean, it is Cleveland after all. You don't have to parachute in from a Piper Cub.
Prior to the campaign, met with.
I'm kidding. I've flown into Cleveland many, many times.
With myself and my wife, Elizabeth. And we talked about the campaign. And when he told me that he was going to run as a Democrat, I told him, look, what can I do to help?
Yeah, we've got a Democrat in the presidency right now. We just got through Donald Trump. He's going to run again. And so, if I can help you undermine the current Democratic president, anything you fucking need.
And he immediately asked me, would you run my campaign? I said, sure. Bobby and I...
it won't take a lot of effort. You got plenty of money and nowhere to go.
Are friends. And as the campaign evolved, without getting into areas that cross into a violation of a do not disclosure agreement, that is a contract that I had.
Oh, you signed an NDA about your discussions with Bobby, and you don't want to. So you saw stuff and heard stuff that you didn't like, but you can't talk about it because of your NDA. I understand. That's freedom of speech. I get it. We'll just trust you that it was wrong enough for you to fucking quit as his campaign manager, but not so wrong that you have to warn people.
I will
It's so personal that it doesn't matter.
say this, that there were disagreements that occurred, and I felt that I was at a crossroads where I had to make some decisions about.
Yeah, you quit. That we assume that part. Do we, folks in the chat? Do we not assume that if you left the campaign, there was a period where you were thinking about leaving the campaign, you were wrestling with the idea, and then you left the campaign? I would think. Can we just jump to the fucking either reason you did or that you can't say?
Whether the campaign was totally consistent with the direction that I wanted to see it go in, or maybe it was.
It's not your campaign. It will never be totally consistent with the direction you want to see it go in. You're his campaign manager. You're not the candidate. At this point, you're making me feel sorry for Bobby Kennedy Jr. because apparently he wasn't. Was he too much or not enough of a puppet?
Time for me to go in another direction, so I chose to go in another direction.
Back to Cleveland.
I love Bobby Kennedy. He's a good man, and I wish him well. I have my own campaign now, and believe me, that's what I'm focusing on.
Okay. All right. Everybody, where can people go? They want to support you. Kucinich.
Gee, I wonder. Where can they go? What's the address on the thing? The thing that's been on screen the whole fucking time you've been there, up on the whiteboard where we've had to deal with this fucking glare for however long this interview was, with the counties that are that he's checking off that he's going to visit or try to campaign in during this, and running as a fucking independent. Dennis. How far they fall. How far they fucking fall. By the way, chat room, love you guys. Appreciate you. How you doing? Appreciate it. And thank you guys for the support. Thanks for the likes. The Facebook likes are really good. If you're on Facebook, hey Mark. If you're on Facebook, don't forget to use the angry emoji. You know those live emojis that you can use? Use the upset one, the swearing one. Because that helps us. I don't know why, but it helps. Facebook would rather you be angry than interested. If I had my druthers for this show, the emoji that would affect the show, that would benefit the show the most, would be that that's how I wish I would make people on Facebook react. Yes, that one. Thank you, Sue. I'd love to see that. Be the, make as much, right? But nope. Yeah. On Facebook, you got to be pissed. So very weird.